Hey, this is Ming here, a speech therapist from agentsofspeech.com. So today we want to talk about different types of speech delay. And this might be for the initiated, for people who have been looking into speech and language delay. That's the full term. You would ask, what kind of types are there? The truthful answer is that there isn't like a specific different types. And speech delay is an overgeneralized term. So you can search our YouTube channel and read about it's not speech delay, but rather it should be language delay or disorder, right? So that's the first point. Second of all, okay, so there's a lot I want to cover. So speech and language delay, it's not really about the type. It's like a profile of a kid. And we have a speech and language profile for every kid that we assess and we try to treat or whatever. So we will look at different aspects, and each person, each child who is speech and language disordered or delayed, they will have different deficits or strengths or weaknesses that we see. So we won't go ahead and say like, oh, that's a type, whatever. It's not like a medical thing, right? It's not like if a child has cerebral palsy. There are different types. Like there's one that has like half spastic type, like what's it called, hemiplegic, right? There's different types. There's medically because of different reasons, living lesions in the brain. But we don't have that in speech and language, right? It's more of a soft thing. It's like a software problem. I would like to describe it as like that. So there are different types. So first of all, the easiest distinctions are receptive and expressive. Okay, so expressive and receptive. So expressive is how much your child can communicate with you, like to you, outwards, express to you. Okay, that doesn't just mean speech. It could mean like using gestures, using like AAC, like using PECS, using a picture exchange system. Just any way that they can communicate with you is expressive language. Okay, receptive language is more of how much they can understand from you. Okay, these are the two types, so to say. When you see on an assessment report, it will say, oh, it's expressive language delay or whatever, right? Or it might be moderate expressive language delay and a mild expressive receptive language disorder, whatever. So when you see that, it's just profiling the child, letting like professionals know, oh, right, so this child is like, when they express, they cannot do, like, they're not as good at expressing, but they're better at listening, right? So there are like, to help you understand a little bit more, there's a way of how therapists think, and this is what I learned in masters, right? There's I learned from my professor who learned from a book that's from the 1970s by a French professor, and basically she put it into like 3 different categories, right? The content, form, and the use, right? So content is about all the things that are inside of a language, like all the building blocks. Okay, so for instance, that's the vocabulary, right? Which is like most of the content. Okay, so concepts, vocabulary, words, word class, right? Does he know like there's a word class like verbs? Does he know that there's a bunch of nouns? Can he categorize like these are transportation, these are fruit, or whatever? So that's putting the theory into it. And then the form is like the sentence length, right? How the language form is presented. So it might be that a child can speak in very long, like a language form, but it's all messed up. So that's the wrong form, right? That's a grammar problem. So given that, that's the 2 things that we speech therapists do a lot, like the content and the form, which is basically vocabulary, concepts, and the form is like sentence structure and grammar, kind of like distilled into simple terms, right? And the last one is called use, which is very particular. Use is more of how the language is used on a daily basis. So you can have the correct content and the form, but then the use is wrong. So for instance, and this is a very soft skill, right? If I tell you that I want something from you, instead of saying like, hey, may I have that cup, please? That's the content and the form and the use. That's correct. It's polite as everything. But if you say something like thirsty, water, I'm quite thirsty right now, like that's being a little bit passive aggressive, and that's the wrong use. And you would see that in a lot of children who are on the spectrum, or even just traditional speech and language delay, is that when they fall down, they say, oh, are you okay, on their own thing, on their own knee, and to express that they're hurt, because they listen to the question form too many times, and they believe that's the correct content and the form to use in that situation. All right, so all of that said, let's go on. We don't have types, but that's how you profile a child, all right? And you can look inside of your child's speech and language assessment assessment report, and you will see a bunch of these inside if the therapist uses this format. So everyone uses different formats, and therefore there isn't much of a types of speech delay that you're looking for per se. So it depends on your geographical location, how your clinicians, therapists are educated, and what kind of school of thoughts they use, right? So the last thing, the types of speech delay might be associated with other disorders, okay? So for instance, autism spectrum disorder is a huge one. And that isn't just like a type of speech delay. It's just that, oh, it's associated with that disorder. It's because, or maybe not because, it's just together, like comorbidity, right? Is that the autism happens with the language delay or disorder, okay? You can also have like ADHD, you can have Tourette syndrome, you can have all these type of things like cerebral palsy that helps, not helps, but is associated with all that speech and language delay going on, all right? A lot of people are also asking me, does my child have like apraxia of speech or whatever? Well, I don't know, to be honest. I'll talk about this in a later video. And at the same time, what these disorders aren't types of speech delay. You know, like even if we talk about apraxia of speech, like dyspraxia is another way of saying it, or dysarthria, which is muscle weakness. These aren't types. These are like its own disorder. Okay, so you shouldn't think about in types, but to profile a child's speech and language prowess according to how they are. And therefore, when you see where the deficits are, you try to teach them symptoms, right? Get to what they cannot do and teach them that exactly, and then it'll be fine. So you don't really need to know the types. You need to profile the child. There isn't really a type in speech delay as well. So at least that's my thought. Maybe if you disagree, please let me know in the comment section, right? Always willing to learn. Anyways, that's the end of this video. If you haven't, you can go to agentsofspeech.com/checklist to grab a list of tools and toys that we recommend you when you start home therapy, okay? So that's it. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.